Shalom. Thanks for joining me. Numbers chapter 31. You ready for this? Now, this is interesting because this is hard. This is one of those hard places in the Bible where God gives some commandments. And a lot of people object to this. They feel like this is a terrible thing to do, a terrible thing to see and hear. And this is no exception, so be prepared. Verse 1, Adonai said to Moshe, on behalf of the people of Israel, take vengeance on the Midyanim. Now that's the Midianites. Midyanim. Remember, these are people who came out and inflicted damage and captured a bunch of Israelis when they first got started going into the Holy Land. And now these are up in the northern part, and they couldn't conquer them back then. But now they've had 3 successes. They've conquered Sihon, Og, and Belak. And now they're coming against the Midianites this time. Now, after having been a little better prepared, he said, now this is interesting. Now, God says to Moshe, Adonai says to Moshe, take vengeance on the Midyanim, and after that you will be gathered to your people. If you remember from a previous video what it means to be gathered to your people, that means you're going to die. We're going to place you in a tomb. And 1 year later, we're going to come back, and we're going to gather your bones, and we're going to put them in an ossuary. And we're going to take that bone box, that ossuary, and we're going to store it with your other relatives. Now, there was no other place for this to happen, but that's what that means. So here's Moses knowing, after this battle, that's the end of my life. He knew that. What would you do if you knew when the end of your life was? Some of you listening to me or watching this video may have been in that situation in your life. I know I've come close a few times. So it's interesting when you're facing what might be the end of your life. Things hit you a little differently. So here it is in verse 3. Moses tells the people, equip men for yourselves for war. They're to go and fight Midian in order to carry out Adonai's vengeance, on the Midian. Remember, if you attack God's people, you're attacking God. So God says, this is my vengeance against them. They are to go and fight. You send these people to war. So the thousands of people in Israel, 1,000 armed men from each tribe. So 12,000 altogether. They mustered for war. And then in verse 7, they fought against Midian, as Adonai had ordered Moshe, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian, along with the others who were slain, Eva, Rekem, Zur, Kur, Reva, the 5 kings of Midian. They also killed, this is important, they also killed Bilam, the son of Beor, with the sword. If you remember the previous videos, Bilam, the false prophet, was hired by Balak to come and stand on the mountain of Peor and curse Israel, and he couldn't do it because God wouldn't let him. But then at the end, he told Balak, you may not be able to beat them, but here's how you weaken them. And he taught them how to integrate the Israelites into their culture first through sexual immorality, which eventually led to the worship of false gods. And that's exactly what Bilam did. And here is God inflicting judgment upon Bilam. Yep, that's what he did right there. Bilam was not forgotten. He didn't go live a happy life ever after. Instead, he was killed by the sword. The people took all the women and their little ones, and they took his booty, all their cattle, flocks, and other goods. They set fire to the cities and all this area. They took all the booty. And then down in verse 13, Moshe and Eleazar the Cohen and all the community leaders went to meet them outside the camp. But Moshe was angry with the army officers, the commanders of thousands, the commanders of hundreds coming in from the battlefield. Moshe asked them, you let the women live? Why, these are the ones who, because of Bilam's advice, caused the people of Israel to rebel, breaking faith with Adonai in the Peor incident, so that the plague broke out among Adonai's community. If you remember, 24,000 people died in that plague. Now, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has ever slept with a man. But the young girls who have never slept with a man, keep alive for yourselves. Pitch your tents outside the camp for 7 days. Whoever has killed a person or touched the corpse of someone slain, Purify yourselves on the 3rd and 7 days, you and your captives. Also purify every garment, whether of skin or goat's hair, and everything made of wood. Eleazar the Cohen said to the soldiers who had gone to the front, this is the regulation from the Torah, which Adonai has ordered Moshe. Even though gold, silver, brass, iron, tin, and lead can all withstand fire, so that you are indeed to purify everything made of these materials by having them pass through fire. Notice, purifying these objects. This is interesting. Passing through fire, purifying an object, passing through fire. Now, that's a spiritual purification. We're not talking about hygiene, getting rid of bacteria, things like that. We're talking about just a spiritual purification. These objects were used and held by folks who worshiped false gods, and so these objects were considered spiritually unclean. And so you pass them through a fire, and that fire would purify these objects so that those who did not worship false gods could use them for everyday use. It's important to know that. So everything that can't withstand fire, you are to have go through the water. If you remember the red heifer in an earlier video, you make the ashes of the red heifer, and that is mixed with water, and that is a water that purifies you. Again, it's a spiritual purification, not a hygiene purification. You're not washing your hands with soap and water. This is considered a spiritual thing. So these objects like clothing and things that would ordinarily burn up in fire, if you're going to keep them and use them, they also have to be purified because they have been spiritually contaminated. So you'll wash them with water of the ashes of the red heifer, and that purifies these objects from spiritual contamination. Okay. So verse 25, Adonai says, take all the booty, both people and animals, you, Eleazar, the Cohen, the leaders of clans in the community, and divide the booty into 2 parts, half for the experienced soldiers who went out to battle, and half for the rest of the community. And so there's all these descriptions and details about how to divide up the booty. And then there's a lot of details that goes down all these different verses. And if you get all the way down to the end of the chapter, that's what it talks about, just dividing up the booty. And it's real detailed, not that interesting to read. But if you want to read it, go for it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to go to chapter 32 next.